So today, we're going to dive into this really fascinating story from history. It's a case study, really, about what happens to our priorities when we're under just immense pressure. We're going to look at a leader who made some choices that, on the surface, seem totally irrational, right on the brink of a war, all to make one single powerful point about what matters most. But before we get there, let's just start with a feeling I think we all know. That constant, nagging pressure of the immediate. The feeling that you're just trying to keep your head above water, day in and day out. I mean, let's be honest, our lives are just packed with demands, pulling us in a million different directions. It feels like this constant storm of emails and deadlines and notifications, right? And that relentless noise makes it almost impossible to focus on the things that are actually foundational. And this is where we get tripped up. We end up forgetting about what's really essential, our core values, our key relationships, the big commitments we've made. And why? Because we're so busy putting out all the little fires of the urgent. The urgent stuff is always loud. It's always screaming for our attention. While the important stuff, well, it just quietly waits. So what if the answer isn't to hustle harder? This brings us to a pretty radical strategy, one that runs completely counter to everything our modern world tells us to do. It's a strategy for success that we find in this ancient story of leadership under fire. So let's get into this core principle, because it really does challenge all our instincts about productivity and how to handle a crisis. It's this wild idea that when you're facing a crisis, your first move isn't to fight, it's to refocus on your most foundational commitment. And this idea? It was about to be put to the ultimate test. Now, you might see a quote like this and think, okay, that's a nice spiritual idea. But the source material for our story frames this as something deeply strategic. It's almost like a formula for success, suggesting that if you put your core commitment first, everything else will actually fall into place. And our case study for this is the story of Joshua leading the Israelites into the Promised Land. I mean, the stakes could not be higher. He is facing imminent danger, he's got an enemy army waiting for him just ahead, and he starts making these choices that just seem baffling. All right, let's really dive into the story. We're going to look at the first two decisions Joshua made, decisions that seem completely illogical, right after they've had this huge, miraculous victory. Just look at the difference here. On the one hand, you've got the logical military textbook strategy. You just won. You've got all this momentum. So you attack immediately. But what Joshua did was the exact opposite. After this amazing victory, he commands a full stop to renew their foundational promise, their core covenant with God. So instead of sharpening swords or planning troop movements, he has them perform these two acts of renewal. And these had absolutely nothing to do with getting ready for a fight and everything to do with remembering who they were at their very core. And this first one, this is just staggering from a military perspective. He orders the circumcision of all the men. This is a ritual that would literally make his entire army physically unable to fight for several days, right in the middle of enemy territory. It was this incredibly profound statement that they believed victory came from their relationship with God, not just from their own strength. And then, right after that, he has them celebrate Passover. And again, this wasn't just a ceremony, it was a powerful act of remembering. It was about reconnecting the entire nation to their story, to their history, of being delivered from slavery in Egypt. It was a very deliberate pause to remember their why. And this incredible focus on priorities, well, it didn't stop once the fighting started. In fact, you could say Joshua doubled down on this commitment-first strategy, even in the middle of the conquest. So it's crucial to understand what an altar is here. It's a physical monument to a relationship. Think of it like a memorial or a cornerstone for a promise. And unbelievably, in the middle of this brutal military campaign, Joshua pauses everything, not to regroup or re-strategize, but to build one of these monuments of commitment. And where he chose to build this altar was so symbolic. You had these two mountains, and they basically represented the two possible outcomes of their core agreement with God: blessings if you obey, and curses if you disobey. Just think about the power of that image for a second. On Mount Ebal, the mountain that literally stood for the curse of failure, they build an altar of sacrifice and forgiveness. It was this physical demonstration that their loyalty to the covenant and the forgiveness they found in it was way more important than any single battle they might win. And it happens again. Later on, while they're in the middle of dividing up all the land they've conquered, a super important administrative task, they pause it all. Why? To set up the tabernacle, which was basically their mobile temple. By doing this, they were placing the symbol of God's presence right at the physical and strategic center of their new nation, before they'd even finished handing out the real estate. Okay, so what in the world does this ancient story have to do with our modern lives? Well, it ties directly back to that tyranny of the urgent we were talking about at the very beginning. You see, the Israelites built these monuments out of stone because they knew something really fundamental about people. We forget. It's just what we do. In the constant rush and craziness of life, it is so easy to lose sight of what is truly most important. And we face that exact same challenge today. So this ancient story, it doesn't really give us any easy answers, but it does leave us with a really powerful and maybe a little provocative question. In the middle of your own battles, your own deadlines, your own urgent demands, what is the one essential commitment that is so important it's worth pausing everything else for?